Hey everyone, ready for another deep dive?
Always.
Well, today we're heading to a planet so hot it could melt lead.
Sounds lovely.
Oh, it is, in a way. It's Venus, and today's focus is a region called Alpha Regio.
Okay.
What's fascinating is that we're not just using the latest data for this.
Oh.
Yeah, we're digging into archives, some decades old, trying to uncover Venus's secrets. Could it have once been more like Earth?
With oceans?
Oceans, maybe even continents.
Oh.
We're going to be looking at some fascinating research from NASA's upcoming DAVINCI mission to help us figure all this out.
DAVINCI, huh? So Venus, often called Earth's twin because of its similar size and mass, it's amazing to think it could be hiding these kinds of secrets.
Yeah, it really makes you wonder what's under those thick, toxic clouds.
Right.
So before we get too deep into it, can you give us a little rundown of this DAVINCI mission?
Sure. DAVINCI, it stands for Deep Atmosphere Venus Investigation of Noble Gases, Chemistry, and Imaging.
Okay, quite a mouthful.
It is, yeah.
Okay.
But anyway, it's set to launch early 2030s, and it's actually two parts.
Okay.
You have a spacecraft, it'll orbit Venus, and then a probe. This probe will descend right through the atmosphere down to the surface.
Wow.
And this probe will be the first in almost 50 years to capture images from beneath Venus's clouds.
So we're finally getting a close-up look after all this time.
Exactly.
Now, you mentioned Alpha Regio. What's so special about this region?
Well, Alpha Regio is mountainous, and scientists think it could be an ancient continent. And what's really interesting is that it's made of this unique terrain called tesserae. You only find it on Venus.
Tesserae. Sounds pretty exotic. What are we talking about here? Can you, paint us a picture?
Yeah, imagine a landscape. It's like a giant, jumbled up mountain range, kind of like, someone took Earth's mountain ranges, smashed them together, and then just stretched them out. It's this really complex terrain, all these ridges and valleys, like a massive geological puzzle. And the way these tesserae formed, that could tell us a lot about whether Venus was once more Earth-like.
Okay, so we've got this futuristic mission planned, but I heard the team is also looking at much older data.
They are.
It seems kind of counterintuitive, doesn't it?
It might seem that way, but it's actually really clever. The DAVINCI team, they're taking data from past missions like Magellan. Magellan mapped Venus's topography back in the 90s, and they're applying modern data analysis techniques to it. They've been able to improve the resolution of those old maps tenfold.
Wait, so they're giving these old images a, high-tech makeover?
Basically.
How is that even possible?
They're using AI to sharpen the images. Imagine you have an old blurry photo. You can use software to enhance it, bring out details you couldn't see before. That's what they're doing with the Venus data, combining old and new information to get the clearest possible picture.
That's amazing. So all this work to get clear images of Alpha Regio, it must be really important for the DAVINCI mission.
Right.
Why is that? What's the big payoff?
Capturing clear images on Venus is a huge challenge. The thick atmosphere, the way light scatters. But refining these AI techniques now means that scientists can make sure that the images captured by DAVINCI's probe are as sharp and detailed as possible.
Okay.
They're aiming for a resolution of 3 feet per pixel.
3 feet per pixel. You're saying we'll practically be able to see individual rocks on the surface.
Pretty much. That level of detail would be revolutionary for understanding the surface of Venus.
So we're going from blurry, distant images to a super high-definition view of this mysterious world.
Exactly.
And that brings us back to the big question. Could Venus have once been a habitable world with liquid water oceans, much like Earth?
Yeah.
That's the ultimate goal, right?
Yeah.
To uncover Venus's hidden past. So what clues are scientists hoping to find in Alpha Regio to answer that question?
Think of it like a geological detective story. Scientists are going to be looking at the rocks in Alpha Regio, seeing if they can find evidence of specific minerals that could have only formed in the presence of water.
So if they find these water-formed minerals, that'd be a big clue. Could mean Venus had a wetter past.
Exactly. And it's not just the rocks themselves. Remember those tesserae formations, those jumbled up mountains?
Yeah.
The shape and structure of those, that could give us some important clues too. The way they're formed, it tells us about the geological processes that shaped Venus, over billions of years. If those processes are similar to how mountains form on Earth, that'd be another point for a more Earth-like Venus in the past.
Like piecing together a giant puzzle. Each clue gets us closer to understanding what Venus used to be like.
Yeah, exactly. And here's where the DAVINCI mission gets really exciting. Remember, we talked about the two parts.
Yeah, the probe going through the atmosphere.
Right. That probe, it's not just taking pictures, it's also going to be analyzing the atmosphere, like the chemical composition as it goes down.
That's really cool. What kind of info can they get from the atmosphere?
A lot, actually. Think of the atmosphere like a time capsule. Studying the gases and other elements in Venus's atmosphere, that can tell scientists how the planet evolved.
Yeah.
For instance, they can try to figure out how Venus lost its water, if it had any, that is.
Right.
And what turned the atmosphere so thick and toxic.
So they're taking the pictures of the surface, combining that with this atmospheric data to build up a fuller picture of Venus's past, almost like a 3D model.
Yeah, that's a great way to put it. And then by comparing this data with the old missions like Magellan, even Pioneer Venus. Pioneer Venus, it dropped probes into the atmosphere back in the 70s.
Wow, okay.
So by comparing all that, they can start to create a pretty detailed timeline of how Venus evolved.
This is all so exciting. I feel like we're on the edge of like a big breakthrough in our understanding of Venus. But it makes me wonder, what are the chances we find something completely unexpected, something that just changes how we view Venus completely?
Well, that's the beauty of exploration, isn't it? You're venturing into the unknown. Always a chance of discovering something totally mind-blowing. Jim Garvin, the lead scientist for DAVINCI, he said, all this old mission data is part of a mosaic that tells the story of Venus. A story that's a masterpiece in the making, but incomplete.
That's a beautiful way to put it. It really highlights how much we don't know about Venus.
Absolutely. And who knows, maybe DAVINCI will find something truly remarkable, something that changes the textbooks on Venus, even challenges our whole understanding of how planets evolve. It's pretty exciting to think about.
It really is. I can't wait to see what they find. It makes you think. Space exploration, it's not just about data. It's about broadening our horizons, pushing the limits of what we thought possible. But for now, let's let all these possibilities sink in. When we come back, we'll finish up our deep dive into the search for Venus's lost continents. And we're back, wrapping up our deep dive into those lost continents on Venus. It's amazing to think that we're on the verge of finding out so much more about this mysterious world, thanks to the DAVINCI mission.
And what we learn about Venus, how it evolved, could have bigger implications too. It could help us understand, why Venus, so similar to Earth in size and mass, why it ended up so different.
That's a really great point. If Venus did have a more Earth-like environment once upon a time, what happened? What could cause such a dramatic change into the scorching hot toxic world we see today?
That's the question, isn't it? It's puzzled scientists for decades. There are theories, of course, runaway greenhouse effect, maybe intense volcanic activity that messed with the atmosphere. But DAVINCI, that could give us the data to finally get an answer. It's fascinating, really. We might be about to rewrite what we know about how planets evolve.
It really is incredible. And I'm really excited about DAVINCI exploring those tesserae formations. You said they're only found on Venus, right? What makes them so different from anything here on Earth?
Tesserae, they're so complex. All these jumbled mountains, ridges, it's hard to explain, like nothing we've seen on Earth. And figuring out how they formed, well, that could be the key to Venus's past.
So if DAVINCI confirms that Alpha Regio, this area of tesserae, was once a continent, what would that tell us about Venus's ancient history?
Well, if we find evidence, that these tesserae form the same way as mountains and volcanoes on Earth, that would strongly suggest that Venus could have a much more temperate climate, maybe even liquid water.
Wow.
Think about that, oceans on Venus.
It's like trying to put together this massive puzzle, searching for those missing pieces that'll show us the whole picture. And each new mission, each new discovery, we get a little bit closer.
That's it, exactly. And we got to remember, DAVINCI is, well, it's a huge step, but it's just one piece of the puzzle. It'll probably bring up even more questions, spark new missions, research, for years to come, probably.
That's the beauty of science, isn't it? This never-ending search for knowledge, a journey that takes us to the most amazing places. And who knows, maybe one day, because of missions like DAVINCI, all that work scientists do, we'll be able to look back at those old images of Venus and see them differently. Not as blurry pictures of this hostile world, but as glimpses into a lost habitable past.
What a thought. Venus holding the secrets to another Earth lost to time.
It really makes you think, doesn't it? We're living in a time of amazing discovery. So wrapping up our deep dive today, I want to leave you with one last question, something to think about. If DAVINCI does show us that Alpha Regio was, in fact, a continent, what could that tell us about the possibility of, past life on Venus? It's a question that I'm sure is going to lead to many more incredible discoveries in the years to come. So keep looking up, keep exploring, and join us next time for another fascinating deep dive into the wonders of the universe.